So, welcome to We Are Napier, the podcast that shares alumni stories, talks about resilient skills, and helps to prepare you for a changing world. So, my name's Dave Jarrold. I'll be your host today, and I'm joined by Patrick Wallace. Patrick, hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Dave. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, excellent, excellent. I have a bit of imposter syndrome going on today because I see We Are Napier as very much a fledgling podcast. I'm serving my apprenticeship as a podcast host, but you're every inch the podcast professional. So I'll get you to tell us a bit about the work that you do.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about every inch of podcast professional, but I try my best. Yeah, so I mean, the most important thing to say is I totally fell into this. Like I studied acting for stage and screen at Napier, graduating in 2014, 10 years ago, and yeah, I mean, and worked freelance as an actor and musician
Mm-hmm.
pretty much up until COVID, to be honest. And COVID kind of knackered that a little bit, for obvious reasons. And I still do bits and bobs of acting, and I play in a band, and I've played in a ceilidh band for weddings and stuff. But every actor has what they call a resting job, so you're never acting all the time. So one of many resting jobs that I ended up getting was I worked at the Glasgow Science Centre, initially just sort of doing presenting on the floors and sort of selling tickets and taking people up and down the tower. And then when COVID hit, I was lucky enough to sort of get a desk job at the Science Centre, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And I got tasked with sort of helping create the Science Centre's first podcast. And they had outsourced that work to a startup company called Bespoken Media. And I got on really well with Dave, who runs Bespoken Media, and ended up starting to do like 1 day a week for him, then 2, then 3. And from last April, I've been there full time, 4 days a week, whilst still doing sort of freelance bits and bobs. But I absolutely love it. And I think having been, both sort of in front of the mic or in front of the camera in past, it's really, really fun to be producing it now, and actually just taking a back seat and creating the whole package, or the whole radio program, or the whole podcast, rather than just doing the talky presenty bit. So it's great. It's been a total roundabout career. I never ever thought that I'd end up working in podcasts, but I'm so glad that's where it's taken me, because it's creative. You also need to be sort of on it from an organizational point of view, and I meet new people every single day in my job, and absolutely love it. That's a very mealy-mouthed way of saying that's what I currently do.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, it sounded like it would be really varied. I was going to ask what a typical day is, but I guess you don't really have a typical day given the variety of work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, the first day I ever had, like, working within podcasting, was literally trying to track down a Inuit for a podcast, talking about how the ice was melting in northern Canada, and my first job was to try and track down a guest who could speak about that from lived experience. And I remember just thinking, right, okay, this is going to be the pattern of things to come. So yeah, you're right. There's some clients that we've got, that regular clients who we work with, and there's a bit of routine to that, and that's quite nice. But yeah, some of the pitches or suggestions we get in, some of the guests that come on every week for the same podcast, it keeps you on your toes, and it keeps you varied. And that's probably my favorite thing about the job, actually. It's just I never know who I'm going to be speaking to at the start of a week.
Excellent. So take us back a little bit. So where did you grow up? What kind of led you to want to go into the acting world originally? Obviously, I appreciate you kind of fell into the podcast world, but what got you to Napier in the first place?
So I grew up in Fife. I had always loved being in the school play or the Christmas show. More than just enjoying it. I think whenever I did it, there was something that was like, I really like this. Like, this is the feeling of making a room of people laugh, and the feeling of pretending to be somebody else and just going all in was just so incredibly exciting and fun. And I think I knew deep down from quite an early age that that's what I wanted to do. And when I do it now, I still absolutely love it. I just think I don't maybe need the attention as much as I used to when I was a kid. But that interest carried on into high school. Drama became a very sort of safe space where I think I felt, comfortable enough to express myself and to play different characters. And, this is back in like early 2000s. So I was still trying to like play football, trying to be cool, and drama felt like the drama class felt like the only place that I could like just let go and be myself and not worry about us being made fun of, or it just felt like a very safe environment. And then our teacher, Miss Berry, who I owe such a great deal to, took the class to see Black Watch, the National Theatre of Scotland play, and that was like revolutionary for me. I remember just watching that and being absolutely transfixed by it. And I think that was seeing people doing it made me twigged something that made me think, right, you can do this as a job. This is how you get in. This is what I have to do. And I sort of meticulously worked out a path. And that path at the time was to get into the RSAMD, Royal School of Music and Drama, or as it's now known, the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. That was sort of given route. And I applied 3 times and I got to the final stage 3 times in a row, and always made the waiting list, but never made the final cut. But while I was auditioning, I studied acting at Coatbridge College, which is now, I think, New Lanarkshire College. I'm not sure. And luckily for me, Napier had started a new course called Acting for Stage and Screen, and you had to do your 2 years at college, get your HND, and then you could go straight into 3rd year level at Napier. And at the time, that was run by Napier and Queen Margaret. I'm still in touch with the lecturers now, and I think now it's just a Napier course, but at the time it was a sort of co-run course. And I am so glad that I went to Napier as opposed to getting into the conservatoire. Because they didn't shy away from letting people know what it's like to be a freelancer, that actually a lot of the skill required is just resilience and determination to keep going and keep plugging away, and to also pursue other interests. And it's, that education and that setup, I think, allowed me to then realize it was okay to go in other directions. And you never have to officially quit being an actor. You can take jobs if they come along, but falling into podcast production, I think I owe a lot of that because Napier set me up for it. Sorry, this is another completely waffly long answer again, but yes, it was a long time interest. It was always going to be acting. It was always going to be acting or music, and Napier is where I ended up, and I'm so glad that it is.
It's fascinating. So I've spoken to a number of graduates from Saki. I spoke to Gus Harrower, who's a musician. Gus. Gus is fantastic, and he is similar kind of thing. He's got his side hustle beyond his music, which is very much music therapy, and it's the variety of things that your creative discipline opens up for you. And there's a number of things that I sort of picked up on from what you were saying there. I think one that I think a lot of students will identify with probably quite closely is what you were saying about that place on stage and that place of safety. And I think there's something in that about finding your tribe and finding your people and finding your place, the place where you feel comfortable, you feel you fit, where you feel you can be yourself and be authentic. And that's where we can kind of grow and flourish and become who we really are and who we want to be. And I think that's so important for all of us, regardless of what your academic discipline is. It's not about that. It's about life and about people and finding your place.
Well, on that as well, Dave, like what I think so important is we don't all learn the same way. And for ages, I never put 2 and 2 together, but I was always better at the subjects where I was using my hands and feet or my body or practically doing something. Like music or drama would sort of come naturally, not in a big-headed way, but I felt fine doing that. PE and sport felt fine doing that. Even the practical experiments with science, I really enjoyed and I could do it. But the moment you asked me to sit down and copy notes off a board, my brain just wouldn't work. And I was the world's worst studier because I don't think anyone ever taught me how to study. And it was also getting the job at the Science Centre because I'd always thought I was rubbish at science. I failed science at school quite spectacularly. I failed science at school, and I was told by teachers I wasn't good at it. And then the moment I actually started, interacting with the exhibits in the science centre, and then presenting experiments to an audience, using my hands and doing it myself, I got it. I suddenly understood it. But if I'd been taught like that, sometimes it's the methods of teaching that rather than what you're being taught, if that makes sense. And I think that's why, Napier and the course being so practical was just the perfect fit.
Yeah, no, that's really important. That's really interesting. The whole thing about, if you judge a fish by its ability to ride a bicycle, then I'm sure there's a quote there somewhere. I can't remember what it is. But yeah, no, you're right. And what the other thing that stood out for me is we talk a lot at Napier about Napier's background and its history and its connection to industry. And we tend to think about practical industries and engineering and accounting, business, these kind of things. But it's really interesting to hear you talking about that from a performing arts perspective, and the fact that it isn't just about the art of performing, but it's the environment and the sector, and the fact that it might be freelance and all the kind of challenges that come up. And so it's Napier's practicality and the way that we're plugged into the real world outside, and what that brings for students.
Yeah, and on that, at Napier, we weren't just taught how to act in front of a camera. We were taught how to set up the shot. We weren't. Our dissertation fourth year was to put on a fringe show. That's essentially like your final year project. But we didn't just have to act in a fringe show. We had to write the pitch. We had to submit the business plan. We had to identify our target audience. We had to flyer for it. We had to liaise with the venue, and they trusted us with that. So, and it's all those skills, like behind the camera or off stage, that has benefited me more than probably anything else, like, to be honest. Because we weren't just taught how to act; we were taught about the industry, like you said. So, for Napier to be aware of that, even from like you'd associate a drama degree with vocal warm-ups, pretending to be an animal, and doing a show, but that that was the furthest thing from what it was. It was it was really educating you about an industry, and it set up a lot of people, I think, to then go on and be teachers or to work in the film industry broader. I'm working in audio now. And it was those skills actually that that made the course so worthwhile, and why I still look back at it so fondly.
That's fantastic to hear, because obviously a lot of what we talk about, and it's the team that I'm a part of, we talk about employability and having that broad range of skills. And I'm gonna come on to the sort of the soft skills side of it in a minute. But the fact that as you say, you're not just doing your performing skills, but you are doing the production, you are doing the promotion, you are doing the advertising. You've got an appreciation of all of the other skills that go around the industry that you're in, which just then broadens out either broadens out your opportunities, or at the very least it gives you an understanding and appreciation of all the other jobs that people are doing in your industry when you're working alongside them. And
it makes you a better person, because you then appreciate the hard work that goes in to make sure that if you are lucky enough to get an acting gig, you don't just turn up and you're the talent. You're there because you're being lit. You're there because there's a director of photography organising the show. There's a producer who's organised your travel to get there. It's a very grounding and humbling, fantastic way of getting taught. You realise that you're actually one of the least important things, rather than being in a TV show or a film. It's and along with that, continue. It's a really important, just to round you as a decent human being, and not to send you out as an actor with an inflated sense of ego. And it really just humbles you, it grounds you, gets you ready for work. And also because you're learning how to make films and you're learning how to produce shows, you can go and do that instead if you like. And a lot of people from my course did.
No, fantastic. So the next bit I wanted to ask you about was, we've touched on it already, and you've referenced it when you talked about going for auditions and getting knockbacks, going for the conservatoire and getting on the shortlist. Was it 3 times? And then and then being so lucky to make it to Napier instead. But it's when we talk about resilient skills, we have a whole program at Napier that's available to students to develop resilient skills, and it's around working in a team, dealing with overwhelm, dealing with stress, building up that whole raft of resilient skills. And so, interested from your perspective and your experience, how you've developed that bank of skills and what's been most valuable for you in your broad career.
I think it's interesting thinking about how I developed them. I'm not sure. I think in a work context, or certainly from like an acting context, I think I owe a lot to the Napier course. I think because if we'd been trained up as actors and sent out the door, with a degree and said, "Well done, go and act," I think the toll that would have taken on people's mental health, because sometimes you have to wait years for your first acting role, but because we're told this is the norm, this is what to expect, this is how you're going to go about it. It really does shape you. It really does increase your resilience. And within a practical acting course as well, you need to audition for parts within the course. You might be doing external, professional auditions or mock auditions designed to, get you used to the knockbacks and the sort of setbacks that come your way. I think a lot of any actor that's still working now is a resilient person. Like that's a fact. Because what is it? 1 in 20 auditions or something, you'll maybe land if you're incredibly lucky. But I think it was the course being honest with us and saying this is what to expect. We weren't being hung out to dry. We were being set up with that mindset. It was a really sort of almost like mentally coaching you about what to expect, and this is what it's going to be like. And because we had lecturers who'd worked in the industry, they were able to say, right, this is what to do, this is what to do. And for quite a lot of us, we were in touch with the lecturers for a long time after we left, asking for advice. Should I take this role? Should I do this one instead? Should I wait? Is this a job worth exploring? And that's invaluable. But I also think, across the board, not just in acting, we need to be taught to fail. University is a place where you have to get used to things going wrong, because that's how life works. You're not going to sail through life and not have any setbacks. So even not from a educational point of view, just from being a human point of view, these learning that not everything's going to go swimmingly is going to make you a stronger person. I just happen to choose a career where that becomes very
I really like that, being taught to fail, because I think you're right. And as I say, we have a program to help students develop these skills. But one of the things that we really stress is that we don't learn from experience. What we learn from is reflecting on our experience. And so it is that, being taught to fail, thinking what will I do next time, and reflecting on each experience when we go through it. But the other thing I think is really interesting from what you just said there is having that realistic expectation of what environment you're stepping into to mentally prepare yourself as much as anything else for those rejections and those knockbacks. And one of the things we're seeing at the minute across the board for students is that the number of applicants for jobs is taking a real spike. And what employers are telling us is that a number of people are using AI to make job applications. So you can scrape off all these job opportunities, use AI to generate your application and apply for 200 jobs in 20 minutes. And so they're seeing that big spike. And what that means is that people are having to apply for a huge volume of opportunities before they actually get something that punches through them and gets in. And so it's preparing for that and preparing for that grind of applications, similar to, as you're saying, to acting. I think that experience is probably going to get more and more similar for other people in different sectors, because it's apply, go through the grind time and time again until you land any kind of opportunity. So it's getting more competitive.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered that. And Bespoken Media, the company I now work for, we did our own recruitment process last year, and even for an audio position, it was for an audio producer, and the people who got the jobs are absolutely brilliant. But we interviewed about 15 people. We could have hired all of them. They were fantastic. But the people who did get the jobs were people who were had probably applied for several roles prior, and had to get used to knockbacks and became stronger people as a result. It's such an important life skill. And it's not even within acting that you need to be resilient. It's in every single walk of life. And you know, one at Clare, we weren't taught to fail. I suppose we were taught to succeed, but you know, also taught how to deal with. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. It's taught how to deal with that failure, because it's not like you're being taught not to be confident, because you're confident, but it's also being taught that, you know, it's okay if you go for this and you don't get it, because something else will come along, and it's not the end of the world if that doesn't work out for you. I think that it's such an important skill to learn, and yeah, it's interesting you say that it's going to be like that across the board, and that's the direction of travel.
It seems to be, yeah, it does seem to be. And I think you're right. As you say, we're not necessarily teaching to fail, but it's seeing that actually not being successful isn't a failure.
Yeah, it's one of the best things that can happen to you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you learn. That's how you get it the next time.
So, as you say, you're getting lots of applications for when you put jobs out. I'm not going to ask if there's an opportunity as a podcast host. I don't feel I've reached the right level for that yet. But the last thing I want to ask you about was, and we asked this to all of our guests, if you were graduating today, if this was your graduation, you're walking across that stage, scroll in your hand, what's the one piece of advice that you would give yourself to get yourself ready for whatever faces you in the future?
Oof. The one piece of advice. I think it would be on a similar lines to what we've been talking about, Dave, which is like, not everything's going to go your way, and that's all right, because that's going to shape the way that, you know, that's going to shape where you are now. If you told me when I walked across the Usher Hall that I would be working as a podcast producer in 10 years, having worked at a science centre, I would have genuinely laughed at you. But I wouldn't have got here without having had all the knockbacks, the failed editions, some of the successful editions that I was buzzing about at the time and then didn't actually turn out to be that great. You know, I'd say it's like approach the future with an open mind, because getting a degree is a massive achievement and it unlocks so many doors for you. And I think, can I sneak in a second piece of advice as well?
Go for it.
If a great opportunity comes along, but it feels like a total change of direction, sometimes that's all right as well, and it can actually take you back to where you wanted to be.
I absolutely love that, and it validates what a number of people have said to me in these conversations around, I'm doing this with my job now in my career. I would never have thought about this. I never knew this existed. You know, so there's so many people, and we get these, you know, we get information that tells us that, you know, people graduating now will have X number of careers, never mind X number of jobs.
Yeah.
And it's true. A number of the jobs that we will all be doing in the future don't exist now. And so, yeah, I was going to say embrace the chaos, but I think the way you phrased it was much better, about having the open approach to the future and just taking on the
podcasts didn't exist 10 years ago. Not really. Like not in the way they are now. Like 10 years ago, my job definitely didn't exist.
Yeah.
And so that makes me really excited for what jobs will exist in 10 years, you know?
Yeah. No, this is it. And there's a lot of panic around AI and changes and all the rest of it.
Of course, yeah.
Things will emerge. Things will come. And I think facing the future with hope and excitement is much, it's probably the way that we want to try and take ourselves forward.
Yeah, totally agree.
Right. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking today. Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks again.